And how many people do you think are over the video?
That's a great question. I
Because,
like to think everybody.
because being a government, a part of a government organization, we got to dot our I's, cross our T's. And if you could, would you think 100?
I'm willing to say it.
Okay, okay. Correctly.
Yes. How do I say it correctly?
You said pep in the step.
Yes, thank you.
Kosi.
Kosi. Okay.
Kelsey.
All right. I'm going
Okay.
to tell everybody who you are.
And just let me take it from there.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You got a hot mic, so watch what you say. Watch what you say. It's recorded.
Just
Okay.
don't call me Trump. Just don't. Don't.
Hey, stay away from the politics. Here we go. Okay. Well, I want to say welcome, everybody, to a Monday night program here inside the Commons. I am Lisa with the Recreation team. For those watching at home, all you're able to see is the presentation on the screen, but you'll be able to hear Joel Kosi's voice in just a second. He is an Urban Forestry Extension Associate at Virginia State University. He holds a master's in horticulture from VPI, Virginia Polytechnic Institute, and
Okay,
State
thanks.
University. He ran a tree service company for 30 years, and he is a tree risk assessment qualified, board certified
can
master
each have one.
arborist, number 19. And he taught master gardeners in Hanover for over 20 years. So please put your hands together for Joel Kosi.
Thank you, folks. I appreciate it. You can give one to your friend Jim. How about two? They're small. I was asked already about a tree that's in the presentation, and I'll hold that off until we get to that tree. And this is a dual presentation, really, because when I was making it up, the champion tree part is synonymous, if you will, with the Remarkable Trees. Remarkable Trees is an endeavor that took 4 or 5 years by Nancy Hugo. You all may recognize the name. She was a garden writer for the Times-Dispatch. She's an avid horticulturalist and agronomist and arborist, believe it or not. She's right accomplished. And the thing about the Remarkable Trees is my background and where I come from the Midwest, come from Ohio, come from the Rust Belt. I come from an area near Lake Erie, near the Cuyahoga River that caught fire, near the degradation of the environment due to, we'll say, unrestrained industrial operations and unrestrained building within the area for habitat for humans. No thought was ever given to future generations or what we were doing to the area. When I was in elementary school in Lake Erie, you could catch pike, walleye, perch, and some catfish from time to time. When I left for the service, smelt and sheephead and carp were the only 3 fish in there. Now with restoration that has been going on, they've actually got Chinook salmon coming back into the Grand River, the Cuyahoga, not the Cuyahoga, and also the Maumee. These 3 rivers are, and the lake are so clean that these Chinook salmon that they put fingerlings in about 20 years ago, 15 years ago, were coming back. It goes to show us as a society that we can change and keep our environment in good shape if we give it a little bit of thought and if we give it some regard for the next generation. Not short-sighted vision, but long-sighted vision. The Champion Tree Program looks at and finds remarkable trees because of their size and their age. They go hand in hand. And It was started, oh, first off, just a short commercial. Um, can you all see that email right there? If you all have computer access, you have any questions on gardening, horticulture, urban forestry, just don't hesitate to contact me. Okay, that's all part of my job, and I also enjoy spreading the word because in my vocabulary, trees are the answer. They are the answer for numerous ecological benefits that I'll expound on in a little bit, but first we'll get to the champion tree aspect of it. And please, any questions, disagreements, arguments, those you can get up and leave, but disagreements that you can ask and we'll hash it out a little bit. And any questions if I didn't make something clear, okay? Now, this is coordinated by the Trees Virginia, which is the state-run Urban Forestry Council is what it's called. And their charge is to increase the urban forest because by the year 2060, over 80% of the world's population is going to be in urban areas and near the coast, okay? We all have had relatives that had farmland or had farms. The kids today, they don't know what that is. And there's no connection between the natural world, really, and their existence for the most part. There are exceptions. I got a daughter that's a big exception. She helps me with tree work from time to time. The Champion Tree Program was begun in 1940 by American Forest, which is the oldest nonprofit environmental system or organization in the country. It was 1875 that they began because of the degradation of the western forest and the overlogging and the ripping and tearing, if you will, just like the miners and strip mining and so on. The degradation of the environment and of their locality doesn't just affect that property, it all flows downhill. We all know what happens to everything flowing downhill. The neighbor's going to get it, and that neighbor's going to get it. And the thing about our environment is that Rudolf Steiner, the 1800s philosopher and agronomist, has a mantra that everything in nature is interdependent. Everything. I need to repeat that. Everything in nature is interdependent. What we do in Petersburg area on the farm by polluting the Appomattox and whatnot, it affects the fisheries downstream. It affects the tourists downstream. The entire environment is affected by what happens upstream. The American Forest started the Big Tree Program in 1940, is about when they started. The Virginia came on board in 1970. Dr. Jeffrey Kerwin, pardon me. He was part of VCE, Virginia Cooperative Extension, and 4-H. He undertook it, and he started it in 1970 in Virginia. And the Big Tree Program is a program to introduce the natural world to young folks, school-age kids, 4-Hers, FFA, but lo and behold, everybody from all ages are now involved with big tree hunting. Some of the most prolific tree hunters are older folks that are retired, love to get out of the house, love to go on adventures. I was in Richmond a few years ago with this one fella. His name just jumped on out. he's out there somewhere. Byron. Along with him was Nancy Hugo and Byron's sidekick. We were exploring and we found the state champ Zelkova on Calicantus Road in Richmond because I'd be driving and he'd say, "Stop, let's go look at that. That's close." This guy had an eye like a pool shark. I mean, he could see just what was happening. We come into one property near Maymont. There was a chain link fence, barbed wire, no trespassing signs. I don't know, I guess he couldn't read because he vaulted that fence and went and inspected this tree. He said, nah, it's not quite big enough. But I said, don't you mind the signs? He said, nobody's ever really hassled me when I tell them what I'm doing. So, because the general consensus is trees have a, we'll say, a intangible effect on us psychologically. A lot of people say it's because we came out of the trees, but that's hard to say. I mean, that's up for discussion. You know, whatever floats your boat, they say. But you just go from there. But no matter what it is, we have evolved with trees and with plants. I'm going to jump off the subject real quick. I've got 2 papers out for review. One is on medicinal medicines that we have forgotten about in our modern age because of better health through chemistry. Yet our ancestors knew about plants, knew their redeeming factors and their medical properties that could benefit. But now, better medicine through chemistry. And there's a lot that we could be using. Back to the subject, I'm sorry. Of these trees that are in the register, which is the big tree, BTR, you have to work in the government and you can't not use letters. You've got to speak in alphabet soup. So BTR, big tree register, they have to be remeasured every 10 years to keep their status because number 2 could be growing faster than the current champion, or the current champion may die, may suffer some sudden weather event that is going to cause its size to be diminished. Any questions so far? Okay. Folks of all ages and backgrounds now are nominating trees for the Big Tree Search. And in 2017, Virginia ranked 3rd in the nation with 74 national champs. And this doesn't only take in the trees that we're used to, tulip poplars, maples, and so on, takes in exotics, introduced trees, so on and so forth. Case in point, White Marsh is the name of the farm in Gloucester that I worked on, one of the 17 ginkgos that came over with Admiral Perry. The limbs on that tree that went over the roof, this no exaggeration, was this size. And yet that wasn't the biggest ginkgo. It was 3rd in line of all the ginkgos. He also had a scholar tree there. It was called Sephora japonica. Now the taxonomist gave it a different name, but he had a huge prayer tree called Sephora japonica that flowers in June and July with very fragrant flowers, but it's not good for pollinators because none of our pollinators evolved with that. So there is a disconnect between introduced trees and our, and I was going to say past the native because it goes past insects, it goes into vertebrates also, it goes into birds, it goes into deer, it goes into raccoons, it goes into everything because those introduced plants don't supply our native fauna. I want to make sure I got the word right. It doesn't supply the native fauna with cover, with reproductive areas, and with food. Okay? And that's one of the major things now. There's so many crepe myrtles. I mean, I wish I had a giant saw. Cut. Yes. They. there's always one that loves them crepe myrtles. On the remarkable trees, Jeff Kerwin and Nancy Hugo spent at least 4 years with documenting all of these trees, and they are the largest, oldest, most historic, beautiful, and beloved trees in the state. I've got a copy of the book here, signed copy. If you want to pass it around, I'm going to search whoever has this last to make sure that I get it back. The clips or the paper here designates the page that a local tree is in the book. The local trees in the book, there's the sycamore in front of the tavern, was a tavern, now it's a library in Montpelier. That tree is not extremely large, but it's old. Another, oh goodness, I'm trying to think of the others. There's 2 or 3 others in there. One is the tree in Henrico County that you asked about, sir. That is an extremely large tree, but it is a gorgeous, beautiful tree that the county has been saving, has been making sure that the root system isn't being demised. They sent out questionnaires to everybody that was remotely, we'll say, involved with the outside, all the A&R agents, the county agents, all the arborists within the state, people that, grounds managers and so on, and they got so many so many responses, thank you. So many responses, they were overwhelmed by it. And that's one reason why it took 4 years. They investigated each and every one of them. Okay? And Nancy's quote is that what they're trying to do, the purpose for this is we want the youth to feel connected with specific trees, and this you could say in their area, in the tree's habitat, not just an anonymous nature setting. And all the photos were by Doug Llewellyn. He also did the photographs for Nancy's second book on A Tree Through the Year, where it shows the development of buds, the explosion of the bud, the flower, and so on, and it shows the growth. Each genus has got a representative list of photos there. It's right striking. All right. Tools for the measurement. Need a compass. Good old military compass. Because when you sight the tree, you look at the tree, you have to understand its position, its aspect in relation to north-south, east-west, and also to buildings, if there are any buildings. First thing you always need is a compass when you investigate these trees. The next thing, you need a 100-foot tape. 100 foot because the measurement is on circumference. It isn't diameter. 99.9% of your measurements in forestry are on diameter breast height, DBR, diameter breast height, DBH, I'm sorry, dry. This 100-foot will take you around on the circumference. It also measures the branch spread north-south and east and west. And a lot of these trees are over 100 feet in the branch spread. So you need some pins to mark it, and then you go from there. The next thing let's see, what have I got? Is a hypsometer. It's a fancy tool. If you ever watch golf, this is what they use to follow the flight of a ball. And you can measure the height of a tree starting down low at the ground level and going up, 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 up. And then you click at the top here, and there's your height at the very, very top. So from the ground level all the way down. I'm sorry. You can also measure the breadth if you have enough room that you can get far enough away and then measure the width of the branches. So this hypsometer, believe it or not, is over $500. However, it saves a lot. But we also can climb, and we go up to the top and drop a line down, and then can measure the line. And thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Both these methods are very accurate. Hardest part is getting it back in the holder. Goodness. Then we have a clinometer, which is a mechanical device that uses the Pythagorean theory for hypotenuse. And what you do is you sight through here. Yeah, and then make sure that this is level, and you start at the ground, then you go all the way up. And then you can measure from where you're at to the base, okay? And then you get the height with the diagonal going up to the top. I didn't explain that well, but you understand what I'm saying, because the last one is the stick. I don't have a stick. Oh, man. I don't have a stick with me, but it's old Boy Scout method. You have somebody that you know their height. They're about 6 feet. You put the stick, you take the top to his height, your thumb at his foot, and then you graduate it up to the top, then multiply the number of times you go up by 6 feet. You got an approximation there for the height. All these methods are usable, but I've unfortunately taken the course in measuring because in the West Coast, where they get very hard situations with measurement, they have a whole section in here on tangents and cosines and the whole shooting match that is way beyond me. I mean, to me, guesstimation is a heck of a lot better. Is anyone here a mathematician or an engineer that works with any? I saw you grinning, so I figured. But it's compound, or not compound, it's not elementary, it's past that, right? Like the trigonometry?
I didn't take biology, botany, so you're way ahead of me.
When it comes to measuring some of these, for example, at Red Hill, which is Patrick Henry's retirement farm, there is an Osage orange tree there that is the national champ. But that sucker has got so many sprouts coming up, you don't know what is the trunk and what isn't the trunk, and it's so hard to measure. That's where these formulas, because you can actually take what you think is the trunk and then these others that may be the trunk, so on and so forth. And in the handout that I passed out on the measuring, it talks about fork trees where you measure. Let me see if I got this set up right. There we go. You see on the live oaks here in North Carolina, there's a straightforward one. You measure 4.5 feet off the ground, the circumference, and you've got the points there. On the measuring, the girth of the tree at diameter breast height, 4.5 feet off the ground, gets 1 point per inch. So you get most points for the bigger girth right there. Can you all see this forked one right there? Yeah. Okay, that's tough because that splits below 4.5 feet. You don't want to measure the void between the two limbs, but this is where the complicated geometry comes in. They have formulas for how you measure and then come up with the amount of points. But then this is the Algernon oak, which is in the book. This really demonstrates the toughness of measuring. That split there, that fork, we'll say, is about 2 feet off the ground. And there's another one on the backside about 3 feet. So you've got to measure this one tree here. You take the square inches of this, radius squared times pi, right, for the area of a circle. Okay, radius squared times pi, of that square inches there, and square inches there, and then you add it together. But that gives you the square inches, it doesn't give you the circumference. Then you've got another formula in that book, or in this book here, that tells you how to compute that out. Or cut it down and then measure and put it back, right? Whatever you want. Now, oops, here's your tree in Henrico. This Algernon oak is at Fort Monroe. This is not the largest live oak in the state. It's the third largest, believe it or not. And it's over 500 years old. Dr. Jay Stipes, professor in forest pathology at VPI, worked on this tree, he told me, back in the 70s. And it was in a little bit of decline then. Not as bad as it is now. But what this tree is suffering from is root damage, okay? Because I've never been in the woods and found a lawn, okay? The two don't exist. You find them all the time in our built environment, but not in the wild. And it's suffering because of disorders that the lawn creates, herbiciding it, mowing it, lack of water, lack of organic matter, and also insects in the lawn are detrimental to the tree roots. And the tree roots don't have that they have evolved with the mulch over the root system that has given them the proper microbes for the root system to survive. Okay, a lot of people don't buy that, but the roots on, oh geez, come here. The roots on all plants, the roots on all plants is 1/3 of the system. You've got 3 organs. You've got the roots, the conductive, connective tissue, and then the foliage. All 3 organs need to work in harmony for the overall to be good. If you would, the microbes in the soil are similar to probiotics in our gut. Okay? Wrong way. Now, this is a white oak, and this is a gorgeous white oak that is not even it's not in the champion list. It's probably 6 or 8 down. And this here is approximately 12 feet in diameter, but the champion white oak, I think, is 18, so it's considerably larger. The fence around this is because a long time ago I gave a lecture at Richmond Nurserymen's Association. And delivery trucks were parking here. They jumped the curb in their vehicles, pick up the truck that they left the night before. Everybody wants to park under trees for shade for some reason. I don't understand, but that's what happens. They were starting to park here, and in January or February when I gave the lecture, the ground was soft. You could see ruts that they were putting in. And I made a comment, watch that tree over time because it is going to gradually decline because of root damage. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take it 4 or 5, 6 years because plants don't respond as rapidly to adverse situations as animals do. They have a totally different mechanism. But within a week or so, this fence was erected and no more cars were parking there, and this tree just continues to carry on. Since this photo was taken, this limb here has fallen off during a storm and ripped part of the bark. However, it's still doing well because the time of year that mishap happened, it happened in the very late fall. Everything in the system of that tree was going to the root system. If it had happened in April or May, the entire plant would have been shocked terribly because the hormones in the top here would have been removed and would have sent a signal by the removal of those hormones to the root system to send up a heck of a lot more energy and sugars, depleting the root system, because the communication within that tree is phenomenal. Scientists are finally starting to figure out the communications within the tree based on hormonal presence or lack of, creating responses in different parts of the tree. Pardon me? Where is it? It's on Hungry Springs Road. Parham is down here. Broad Street is on this side. And it's across from, there's a lawyer's office here and the dentist office there. That's directly across from it. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
How do you know it's 500 years old? Do you drill a core?
No, that's creating damage. Foresters do that because they're going to probably they're going to start to log. But there's a coefficient, and I don't have the book with me, but on this oak here, you would measure the DBH, diameter breast height. Say if it's 5 feet, you multiply it by 5. Then you come, I'm sorry, inches. Multiply, that's 60 inches, you multiply it by 5. That's 300 years. Okay?
That's an estimate.
Yes, yes.
It might be 300, might be 200, might be 400, depending on rain and other stuff during the period.
Yes. Yes, that is an estimate, but it's a lot better than drilling a hole. Whenever you drill a hole, plants don't heal. They seal and compartmentalize. They don't heal. That's a misnomer. We've given plants anthropomorphic traits ever since we've been in grammar school. We've been taught that plants heal. They don't heal. They seal and compartmentalize. If they healed, we wouldn't have hollow trees. We wouldn't have damage that you see in a tree from years earlier. The other, and there's no such thing as plant food. I got to throw that out because that's such a misnomer. The only food comes through photosynthesis. And if it wasn't for photosynthesis, we wouldn't be sitting here because the meat that you had today or the veggies that you had today would not be existent because if they don't photosynthesize, we can't eat them. Beef is a secondary consumer, eating grass. That is the primary producer, beef being a secondary consumer. And it's the food chain. Pardon me. Anything else right now? Speaking of which, I think I was here 20, 25 years ago. If I remember right, there was a whole batch of cherries, Quonset cherries, when you don't make the right coming in, but you go straight and keep on going. They were all dying because of girdling roots. In the nursery, when they grow plants, they don't grow them for longevity. They grow them for sale and for profit. And I say that because I've done nursery work. My hort degree is a lot in landscape design, and I know about nurseries and its job security when the plant dies. But then again, it doesn't help the entire ecosystem when you have a biomass that is grown, that consumes carbon, consumes energy. You put it into the landscape, and it only lasts 10 or 15 years because it self-strangles by the girdling root that encompasses the base of the tree, not allowing the sugars made during the growing season to the root system and doesn't allow the nutrients from the soil to reach the top. And it starves itself, and it just actually dies. It lives off its fat, if you will, stored energy. Wood is a carbohydrate. It's just a stored energy waiting to be used for us in some way or to support the tree for longer growth. Okay, now mature trees, they're subject to weather events. How we can keep trees growing to a mature, large state so they make, if you want them to live long enough, first off, you won't see it because most of these trees in that book are over 100 years old. But sudden weather events, this is from the tornado in Essex County earlier this year, and this magnolia here is a fair-sized magnolia. That's about a 4-foot diameter trunk right there. It lost the top, and it lost limbs here. This hackberry here lost a lot of growth right out here. But at the time of year that this happened, that tree will actually respond and will send out stored energy within itself to replenish that green photosynthetic potential surface area for the betterment of the whole. And these are young trees too. This hackberry is a young hackberry. This magnolia is middle age, and this maple here is a young maple. All these older plants have gone through juvenile, mature and over mature life stages. Each of the life stage has different characteristics regarding growth and regarding survivability and regarding nutrient needs. And that's something that we have to appreciate. Everybody wants to fertilize young trees to make them grow faster and so on. That really doesn't do any good, because it's like us taking an excess of vitamins. We pass it. Trees do the same. They don't accept that they need. They actually know a lot more about survival than we do. No arguments yet? Okay. All right. The other thing that trees reaching maturity need to worry about is development. This is in Chesterfield County, $400,000 plus lots, not houses and lots only. They ruined the entire forest that they moved into. Not only did they ruin the individual trees on the lot by this construction, but the people paid 15% higher for that wooded lot. At the end of construction, you don't have a wooded lot, but you're still paying the note on the 15% higher, and you're still paying taxes on a 15% higher. Also, if somebody builds on this lot right here and puts a house up, probably all these trees surrounding are going to be gone because of the root degradation. Then they got to pay for removal. And they don't die the first year. Builders know that because it's built into the contract. They'll guarantee trees for 1 year. Most of the time, it takes them 4 or 5 years to die out. All right. This people pressure. This is a condominium area in western Henrico where the people really love their lawns, which they don't have much of because of all the shade. Now, they had to have irrigation. I tried to talk them out of irrigation because what they did was they brought root death to these trees here by the sudden cutting of those absorptive roots, and this was done in January or February. The absorptive roots were just getting set to absorb water and nutrients for the growth on the aerial part of the plant. They're gone. Not only that, that time of year with that root severing, they opened up lesions and openings in the roots for pathogenic funguses such as Phytophthora and Pythium to gain entry into the root system. But they had to have irrigation for their turf. The price of that irrigation is really, it's really high. And it's not going to do any good, to be honest with you. It may do good 1 year, but in the long run, it isn't going to do good because of tree death that you're going to have. And all these trees here are shading these buildings right here, these right in here. And they're adding to the total property value just by their presence, along with the eco services that they're providing. And that's these maturing trees and over mature trees are the most important for eco services, meaning the benefit to the overall ecology. Let's see here. Okay. These eco services, solar radiation reduction. More people die from heat than they do from tornadoes and hurricanes, and mostly in underserved localities like the Manchester area of Richmond, parts of Petersburg. People die of heat, and especially on the West Coast now. I have a niece in Portland that's going to school there, doesn't have AC, and she says she's dying because no AC, but with the fires and also with the extreme heat, there's nothing you can do, and just got to grin and bear it. Particulate matter absorption, extremely positive benefit. There are studies done by Nature Conservancy where a mature tree and If anybody wants, if you Google National Tree Benefit Calculator, it will give you the tonnage of particulate matter that a certain size tree in a certain zip code will take out of the atmosphere. Because of the pubescence on the leaf, the particulate matter is captured by the leaf and is held on the leaf. And in a lot of cases, it's absorbed in the stomate, the opening in the bottom of the leaf, and it's assimilated in the wood, depending on the type of particulate that it is. So the trees do a heck of a lot for cleaning our air, cooling our atmosphere, and the entire planet. But the biggest thing in our urban setting is stormwater mitigation. Houston, again, is, there's been papers written saying how if the zoning would have been a little bit better and less impervious surface wasn't placed in Houston 2 years ago when they had that massive amount of rain, the flooding would not have been as bad. The Detroit flooding just the other day, a lot of that may have been prevented if less impervious pavement was there, less impervious surfaces. And we are getting more intense and more threatening rainfalls. And the flooding is going to become a very bad issue because not only are you getting the floodwaters, but you get the unsanitary conditions that brings. Whenever MS4 is, anybody here familiar with MS4? Because if I say the acronym wrong, correct me. It's Municipal Sanitary Sewage System. There's another S in there, but MS4. It means that for most of your rains, the water is going to go through the designated channels to the filtration plant. When you reach over its daily allot limit, it flows right to the waterways. It bypasses the cleaning process. It goes right to either your lakes or your streams, in our case, the Appomattox and the James and the Rivanna River, depending where you're at. That's when you get extreme rainfall that your MS4 system cannot handle. At Virginia State, I got them on a program called Tree Campus USA from the National Arbor Day Foundation. Has anyone heard of the National Arbor Day Foundation? They're the tree people, plant trees and all that. They have designations of Tree City USA, Tree County, Tree Fort, like Oceana Air Base and a couple others down in Tidewater are Tree Fort USA. And by that designation, it helps with their ecological standing and also with their environmental designation that they get, which actually, believe it or not, helps their taxes. When you're doing more for the environment, the taxes on on the municipal area there is reduced. Yes, it is a state organization. It shouldn't be paying taxes, but there's fees and different things. And I was told by the facilities people that Tree Campus USA helped them out immensely. And different things like that with trees, different designations can help areas out, help localities out. We're trying to get Petersburg on the Tree City USA because it also helps for grants, ecological grants and rebuilding grants, things of that nature. Wind reduction. On wind reduction, that's mostly for warming on certain areas, placing trees on the northwest, even a deciduous tree, which has 70% of its wind reduction potential during the winter as it does with leaf on it. Believe it or not, because of the branches. When the wind hits an object, it doesn't just divert and like skip over, it actually rolls higher and then keeps on going. So you actually can get the wind to go over your structure or your location. That also helps on reducing soil erosion and reducing a drying of the soil. All these little things, they have they have nuances that build up, and at the end, the collective benefit is much larger than the individuals. Habitat for birds, which is so important. I read an article the other day where I want to say it's 40% of the birds in the continental United States are gone. 40%, that's what, I don't know, that's what this one paper says. But the reason primarily is there's no food for them, no food for the youngsters. Only 40% of birds eat seed. Most of the birds eat caterpillar and other insects. Anyone here familiar with the guy from Delaware? Oh, I can't. His name just went on my head again. Jeez, oh Pete, Doug Llewellyn. Oh man, I'm sorry, but he's the one that has the book Bringing Nature Home, and also The Nature of Oaks. He has done spectacular research from a naturalist standpoint and looking at the entire sphere, not just looking at one aspect of it, but the entire sphere. During the winter, an oak tree harbors different larvae of certain insects, and only certain birds know about those larvae, and they go after it in the oaks. And just by being an observer of the wild, and what he does mostly, he says he just goes out in the woods and he watches and he sees what happens. He doesn't just plow in there for a few seconds, but he says he just waits for nature then, or the animal world, to come back to him. Once they recognize he isn't a danger, then they come back to him. Anybody here still hunt? Whenever you still hunt, you sit still and things come around. Oxygen production. So important. Along with that, CO2 sequestering, not just in the foliage for photosynthesis, but in the roots in the soil also. The CO2 sequestering is so important, along with giving off oxygen. I gotta have a disclaimer here. Still, seaweed produces as much oxygen as do trees. That's a well-disguised fact, but it's very true, because 70% of the earth is on water, and there's a lot more seaweed than there is forest. And the seaweed forest produce an awful lot of oxygen. Above are tangible quantities, all validated by research, hard numbers to back every one of those statements up. For example, that oak in Henrico County, if that's 4 feet in diameter in that zip code, that one tree during a 1 year will mitigate 28,000 gallons of water. Meaning that when the rain comes down, it's coming through what's called the inflow. It comes, hits the foliage, hits the twigs, hits the bigger limbs, hits the bark, and is caught in crevices, caught in crotches, and then infiltrates into the soil. Whereas just outside the drip line, it erodes. Because if you ever seen a film of a raindrop hitting barren soil, it's like a bomb going off, and the soil is exploding. That's where you start your erosion right there. But with the trees, that you get the inflow that allows recharging of the aquifer, and especially with larger trees, because it's so important to remember must be the next slide. The benefits from a tree after it reaches about 10 inches in diameter. It is a source on the environment. From its germination or its propagation to transplanting until it reaches 8 or 10 inches in diameter, it's a sink. It has taken more energy, more carbon, more fuel, more everything to grow that tree, transport that tree, transplant that tree, maintain that tree until it gets that size. It's a sink on the entire ecosystem. Once it's 8 or 10 inches larger, each 2 inches is a geometric increase in the benefit of that tree. So for the sake of argument, if the tree was 10 inches in diameter, and it inflowed 10,000 gallons of water per year. When it reached 12, it would double that rain mitigation. So just 2 inches and larger, meaning that you have a larger root system, a larger canopy spread, more leaf surface area and so on, more inflow to recharge the environment, to recharge the ecosystem that we are all dependent upon, okay? And that's, I'm not a doomsdayer, but just like to think a little bit ahead. I've got a young grandson I'd like to see enjoy some of the natural world and not have everything in concrete. And these aesthetics, the above are tangible and quality hard numbers to back it up by the U.S. Forest Service. If you Google Nowak, David Nowak, U.S. forest researcher in up in New Hampshire. He has done studies in Baltimore, Dallas, San Francisco, Oregon, all over the U.S. on these very ecosystem services, and he has numbers to back it up. And these are not just papers thrown together. They're peer-reviewed, meaning that 2 or 3 other people of the same caliber reviewed his papers, found fault with his papers, and had amendments made to the papers until everybody was satisfied. It's not just a bunch of hooey, or we'll say like a sideshow. It's all hard science. Now, the aesthetics and intangibles, these are really fascinating in as far as Kathleen Wolf at Washington State has done numerous papers along with University of Chicago and Northwestern has done numerous papers, numerous research papers on the benefits of plants to people in the urban environment. For example, in this room right here, the room would be more inviting if there was some greenery here, not just the wooden, even though wood is soft. If there was some greenery put around here, the room would be more inviting. How many have gone to the doctors and have seen pictures of a natural, or we'll say paintings and photos, portraits almost, of natural settings? They're in every hospital corridor. And it's because it sets your mind at ease. It reduces your cortisol and your adrenaline. Also, plants produce phytocides, phytocides, which is a naturally produced antibiotic and insecticide that plants make. Whenever you've gone into a wooded area and you've sort of smelled the woods, we'll say, not the mold or that, or not the moss, but you smelled the essence of the wood, you are passively taking in these phytocides that increase your white corpuscles that help your killer cells to fight off diseases within the human body. And that is all part of what is called forest bathing, or actually natural immersion. Forest bathing is a thing that the Chinese or Japanese Orientals perfected in 1980 in their forest because of their urban tightness and their urban concentrations. People needed to get back. People needed to really reconnect with something beside concrete and asphalt. And they have found, there are studies, legitimate studies in this country and in the Orient on the phytocides and the reduction of adrenaline production, reduction of cortisol within your system, and there's another hormone that is produced that lowers your blood pressure, and it also makes you calmer. And it's a passive situation. You don't take a pill, you don't take any toxin or a tonic or that. It's just a passive inhalation of the natural scents that the woods puts off, benefits us. I have to say, my grandmother, who born in 1860, she came from Czech Republic, and she knew more about growing things and cycles than anybody, which was passed down from her ancestors to her, and she tried to pass it to me. I blew it off because I was a know-it-all kid, blew it off. But the more that you think about it, we have evolved with the plants, and our ancestors knew what plants in their area were beneficial, were dangerous, and so on, and the purpose of different plants. Just like in the woods, there's certain woods like poplar that you use in a certain part of a house. There's woods, great example is the longleaf pine. I got a section of longleaf pine wood that came out of the Sears building in Chicago. The engineer said that piece of pine, which was probably as long as from here to that other wall, was as strong as the steel that they put in there, because of the wood's tendency to give and not just be rigid, but it would flex a little but would come back. And not a single bit of rot was in that wood either. And that building was, I got that in 78 or 80, something like that. And that building was about 1880 when it was built up, and they were redoing it. People knew about the benefits of the natural world and utilized the benefits of the natural world. We are getting away from it, and it's a shame. And increased geometrically with the tree diameter, I mentioned that. And that's it. I got 5 minutes if anybody has any questions or whatever.
What's the biggest tree you've got out of Virginia?
In the book, you mean, or the?
Of those, how many did you have? 100 and something? What's the biggest tree?
I'd have to say it'd be the Osage orange at Red Hill, because that thing is monstrous. I mean, it's probably 18 feet in diameter. That's in diameter. And that's the biggest girth I've ever seen. It's not as big as the redwoods and all that, okay? But in this part of the country, I'd say that's probably the biggest one that I've been exposed to.
Any final questions for Joel?
There you go.
Anybody?
Mm-hmm.
I will say Joel is the only person, I've been here almost 3 years, and he's the only person that came bearing farm fresh eggs. So please give him a round of applause for keeping us.
Those are for you, not for everybody else.
Hey, if anybody wants an egg, I'm willing to share. It can be your
Those
parting
are
gift.
all different breeds too. They're all different breeds.
saw
We
the
got
different
turkeys.
colors.
We had a goat that just came back from Tech having a mastectomy.
You got a goat egg? Is that what you?
No, she had a mastectomy.
Oh,
at
I thought you
Tech.
said they're all different kinds of eggs, and then we just had a goat. What?
I'm sorry, I jumped
What did
around.
you do to this goat at Virginia Tech?
Experimental. Experimental.
Anyway, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. This is my final Monday night program, and I thank you for being in the audience and being part of it. Thank you, Joel, for sending us out on a good note. It's been a pleasure to serve you these last 3 years. Thank you very much. Have a great night. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Next Monday night, you might be wondering what's going on. It's July 5th. It is a holiday for staff, so residents are ruling the roost. Let me tell you what's happening. 4 o'clock, the Creaky Crooners are going to be down here doing a patriotic performance. So come and see them on July 5th at 4. And then at 7, we will watch 1776, the movie musical. It is a long one, so prepare for an intermission. Prepare to be sitting for a while. It's over 2.5 hours, but very timely for the holiday. All right, well, thank you again for coming out, and we hope that you have a great night. And thank you again for being so supportive over these years. Really appreciate it. Thanks.